What would you do if an authority figure told you to hurt someone? Most people say they'd refuse, but in 1961, a psychologist proved that 65% of ordinary people would kill a stranger just because they were told to. This is the Milgram Experiment, and it reveals the most disturbing truth about human obedience. Yale University, 1961. Professor Stanley Milgram wanted to answer one question. Why did ordinary Germans follow orders to commit genocide during the Holocaust? Were they evil? Or would anyone follow such orders? He created an experiment. Volunteers were told they were testing how punishment affects learning. They would be the teacher, another person would be the learner, strapped to a chair in another room. The teacher's job, ask questions. When the learner got an answer wrong, deliver an electric shock. With each mistake, increase the voltage. The shock started at 15 volts, mild tingling, but they went up to 450 volts, marked on the machine as danger, severe shock. The final level simply said XXX, deadly. Here's what the volunteers didn't know. The learner was an actor. There were no real shocks. But the screams were real, the panic was real, and what happened next shocked the world. The experiment began. The learner, a middle-aged man, started making mistakes. The teacher delivered shocks, 15 volts, 30 volts, 45 volts. The learner grunted in discomfort. At 75 volts, he moaned in pain. At 120 volts, he shouted that the shocks were painful. At 150 volts, he screamed and demanded to be released. Most teachers hesitated. They turned to the experimenter, a man in a white lab coat, and asked to stop.
Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on.
And they did. At 300 volts, the learner pounded on the wall, begging to be let out. After 330 volts, he went silent. No responses, no screams, just silence. Many teachers assumed he was unconscious or worse.
Treat no response as a wrong answer. Continue shocking.
65% of participants went all the way to 450 volts, the maximum, the potentially lethal dose. They believed they might have killed someone, but they followed orders anyway. Why? Milgram identified 4 key factors. Authority legitimization. The experimenter wore a lab coat, represented Yale University. People obey authority figures, especially in official settings. Gradual escalation. The shocks increased slowly. By the time it reached dangerous levels, participants were already committed, shifting responsibility. When teachers protested, the experimenter said, "I am responsible, not you." This removed personal guilt, physical distance. The learner was in another room. Out of sight, out of mind. Easier to harm someone you can't see. Later, Milgram ran variations. When the learner was in the same room, obedience dropped to 40%. When teachers had to physically hold the learner's hand on a shock plate, it dropped to 30%. Proximity matters. When the experimenter left the room and gave orders by phone, obedience dropped to 20%. Authority presence matters. But here's what's most disturbing. After the experiment, participants were debriefed, told the shocks were fake, asked how they felt. Many were relieved, but some defended their actions. They said, "I was just following orders," the same defense used by war criminals at Nuremberg. This experiment explains the Holocaust, the My Lai massacre, Abu Ghraib torture, corporate fraud, toxic workplaces, any situation where people harm others because someone in authority told them to. Milgram proved that evil doesn't require evil people, it just requires obedience. Critics say the experiment was unethical. Participants experienced extreme stress. Some had psychological trauma. Many felt guilt for years. Milgram's methods would never be approved today. But the findings remain. We now know that ordinary people can commit terrible acts. Not because they're cruel, but because they obey. So here's the question. If you were in that room, would you stop at 150 volts, at 300, or would you press the button all the way to 450? Before you answer, remember, 65% of people just like you went all the way. The scariest monsters aren't the ones who enjoy cruelty. They're the ones who follow orders without question. Thank you for watching. If this made you think, subscribe for more dark psychology, and remember, the next time someone in authority tells you to do something that feels wrong, you have a choice. Will you obey, or will you be the 35% who refuse?